Hi, Dave here, and welcome to part 2 of the Remix Deck series, where this could change your life. Now, I know, of course, it can't change your life, but it could help you if you do have the F1s. So today we're going to look at the overlay. Now, a lot of people don't know about this. It's very underutilized, and I think in the new boxes, they doesn't even come with the overlay anymore, which is sad. But if you can get hold of one of these lovely things here, this can benefit you greatly, or could benefit you greatly. So if you get a screwdriver, I prefer a knife, but I haven't got one at the moment, and gently prise up these on the faders, and you're going to take all of these off, and you're going to slip the overlay on top, so the filters then go over the top. So as if by magic. And now you can see we have the overlay on top, and it fits nicely and doesn't affect any of the faders or rotaries. Now what this little beast does is it actually will control your decks A and B, or your C and D depending. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So what we want to do is we want to go to our preferences and the F1, and we want to make sure that user map is ticked. Not MIDI mode, but user map. Then we can close that. Then we hold shift and browse, and it goes blue. So this is now the overlay. So it's completely different. So I'm going to take you through it now. So we have dry, wet, filter, and we've got faders, and we've got all these different things here. So let's just go from the top. Now what this will do is this will split this by default into decks A, which is this side, deck B into this side, and then effects units 1 and 2. Now there are caveats on this, and you can only use group effects with this. But if I change this to group here and make this, I don't know, a gator, and it works the first 2 groups. Okay, so we can have our wet and dry over on our effects 1, and then our filter, which is on our mixer, and then same the other side. You can see the filter on deck B, and then you can see the effects on both of these. Now, it is a little bit weird, to be honest, using a fader for a rotary, but it gets the job done. So the first thing down, we've got quantize, which you can see turns on and off, and we hold shift. We can then turn snap on and off there. Then I'm going to skip to browse, so you can see that it turns it into the browser mode, and now I can load decks A and scroll and load deck B. Hit my browse, done. Just before we get going, these songs are downloaded from YouTube, so I don't get told off again for copyright. So just remember that this isn't my music of choice, but they're not bad either, so don't get me wrong. I just want you to know that isn't the sort of stuff I would play, but it gets the job done. Now, what happens is this and this are now lit up, and that is supposed to be a white hot cue. For those of you who know Traktor, a white hot cue is a beat grid cue. You can see now I can now press my cue and it plays. Pretty cool, hey? And the same thing over the other side. And if I want to delete because this beat grid's wrong, hold shift, get rid of it, press 1 there, and turn it into a grid. Now, what's happened is this has become decks A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hot cues, and decks B. Now, this is something that I use and have used so many times because I used to use the S2 Mark III with only 4 cue points, and this became my 8 cue points. I also use this in this mode when I'm using my turntables in scratch control, and it's really, really handy. You know, you have Novation dices, but this is just easier to use for me because it's all in Traktor. So that means we can now cue that, and I can go along, set my cue, wherever I want. Now, the only downside to this is the fact that it doesn't have a play button, but I'm going to cover that in a minute about what I do about that. But you can set these and delete them as you would normally on any other Traktor controller. And we also have buttons that do a couple of different things as well. So if we press capture for the first time, these go green. And now on the right-hand side and the left-hand side of 5s, you will see ×2, divide by 2, set and 4. So what this has done is put it into a loop mode. That means I'm temporarily boycotting cue points 5 to 8, but I've replaced them with a ×2, divide by 2, set, and a 4. So essentially set is activating the loop. And then we can do a times by 2, we can do a divide by 2. And if we want to unset, hold shift and set, deactivates it. And for some reason, they've decided that this is always going to be a set 4. So even if you have this set to 32, if I do this, it instantly jumps to a 4. And don't ask me why, but if I hold shift and press 4 afterwards, it will go to 8, and that's it. Don't know why. But this means we can set loops on the fly just like you would any other controller. So I can set my amount. Halve it. And that reacts as normal as you would expect. Then what we've got, which is really clever, is if we do shift and capture, this now turns into an orange color. And these are our beat jumps. So this means we can beat jump however much the loop is set to. So at the moment it's set to 1/8. So all I can do is just times that. Say I want to keep moving on by 16. Shift, capture, and I can move forwards 16 beats, back 16 beats, which is really, really handy. Because I don't have a jog wheel, so therefore I can use this to beat jump. Now the top two that are not lit up, if you go to move in the advanced section, you can actually select, do I want to move by 4s, which will move by 4s. Now I only ever use loop, so I don't use these buttons at all. I could actually remap them if I wanted to. I have mine on loop, therefore no matter what my loop is, I can then jump it around. But if you do want to use it independently, you can then just say 32s, nice and simple. Once we've got that, we can go back to our normal 8 hotkeys. And then we have a duplicate button here. So before, as you may know, if you hold this and drag it over, it will instantly duplicate it. You can then do that by holding type, load B, and it'll instantly load whatever's in A to B and vice versa as well, which I think is really cool. The next thing we have is hold sync, and the orange writing comes into play. So we have sync, master, key lock, and jump back to the beginning. So if we wanted to, we could go sync and then have our sync turned on and off. We could turn it into the master, our key lock, and then we can jump back to the beginning if we want to. So you can see already there's quite a lot of stuff you can do with this. Then down at the bottom, we have our effects assigns. Now this will take you a while to get used to it, but once you get the hang of it, it's just like anything else. So at the moment, if you look, I can use this to turn on my effects 1 and 2 in effects 1, and the first 2 effects in effects 2. But if I hold shift, I can then arm my tracks in the mixer section as well. Okay, I want beat masher on effects 1, let go, press play, put my wet all the way up, and you can move things around like that. Now this may seem fiddly, but trust me, when you get used to it, it really is useful. And you may only use a couple of buttons, but that's a couple of buttons that you didn't have. Now remember, this is like an afterthought of how the F1 can be used. So someone sat there and thought how they could do this, and I think it's genius. Now the one thing that really sticks out that is a bit annoying is if you hold shift and browse, what it does is it takes it back into standard mode, which is your remix deck mode, but it changes the browser, which drives me up the wall. I don't know why they assigned it to that, but we can actually get rid of it. So if we go into our controller manager, and don't worry, you don't need to learn how to MIDI map. We're just deleting one thing. So go to user, and I'm going to select the assignments just so I can see what's on global. And it's the layout selector. And all I'm going to do is delete it. That is it. Come out of that. And now you can see I can flick between user mode and normal mode without faffing. Then what you could do is put it into 4 decks and control all 4 in different ways. So if we go to user mode, I want to start from the beginning. Okay. And what I can do is just set up some cue points. Now I can use just this as my controller. So what I could do is I could go to, say, I'm going to say 3, I'm going to put that as a loop. So capture 4. I'm happy with that. Skip this back. So you can see you can control most of A and B, plus you can skip it back and do your remix decks as well. Now, obviously, play button is a big, big thing. But on top of that is audio. So where would you have the audio? You don't really want it running from your mini jack out of your computer. This is where we bring in something that's completely the same size, and it is the Z1. So the Z1 is Traktor's modular mixer, basically. It's got a sound card with RCAs built on the back. It's got a mini jack headphone socket here, and then you can have your faders, you can have your EQs. Yes, you've got a filter as well, but that means you could potentially MIDI map this to something else. Maybe the key. I'd probably use this as changing the key. But again, it doesn't have a play button. So what we can do is we can go into here. I know we're doing MIDI mapping, but it can be really simple. Go into our Z1. What I've done here is I've used the mode alongside the filter, because I've got a filter anyway here which instantly turns it on. You see? So I'd probably use this as the key and keep that as the filter, which would be quite nice. And then I can hold mode, press play. And we know we don't need to press play on the remix decks because we can just press the buttons. So now we have a sound card going straight to the speakers or a mixer with EQs, play functions, crossfader and volume faders, and then we can have all the cue points. So now we could actually go to a club or a party and just take these two with our laptop, and that's all we would need for the night, if you've got everything prepped, of course. But that means I can go back to the beginning of these two, and I know I can press play whenever I want to on these. I can sync it, I can loop it, I can do whatever I need to do, beat jump it, and I don't need to touch the computer, which is really important. So I could do stuff like this. So with these two little things, you can do something completely incredible, especially because you bought the F1s for remix decks, and now it can do something else. So it can control A and B. So what else you could do is plug in the S2 Mark III and use the F1 in user mode to control the effects over those decks. Or you could kind of do a 4-deck mix. And I'll show you that now. So now what we have is we have the S2 Mark III plus the F1. Now obviously we can use the F1 in remix mode to use it as 4-deck mixes. And you can use the sample rotary here to turn up decks C and D. You can see they can move both up together. So essentially you can do 4-deck mixing in this style with 2 remix decks underneath A and B. But we still don't have effects controls. You could, if you wanted to, use my MIDI mapping that I did on another video, and that's becoming increasingly popular, which thank you very much to everyone who likes that. Or you can then turn this into user mode, and therefore these are now our controllers. So you could then use the F1 to control 4 of the effects. So we could do something like this. So you could do that as well. But if you wanted to, you could use the S2 Mark III as is. Then what you could do, you could then go to your preferences, go to your user mode, and in here, edit and change it from A, B to C, D. That means once I put it into user mode again, I can load up 2 tracks here. I'm now controlling deck C. So you have the potential to use 4 decks with the S2 Mark III, plus effects units. Now, because we've changed them to C and D, if you notice now, this does nothing. And that's because, and again, this might be something that you're really interested in, if you put the effects on and turn them into 4 effects units, are you keeping up with me? These now control 3 and 4. You can see, and there's the wet and dry. Now you cannot, and I've tried it and I wish it could, but you cannot use 2 F1s in 2 user modes controlling A and B in one and C and D in the other. It just can't be done. There are loads and loads of other ways around it though. You can use the Z1 and then control C and D in there. So you've got 2 mixers. You could use the X1 Mark II. That would be really cool. So you can use effects there as well for A and B, but you've also got play buttons. You can do loads and loads of other things. So I just wanted to show you that in user mode, you can do some crazy stuff. To be honest with myself, what I like to do is have this sitting in user mode in between my turntables and mixer, use it in scratch mode so I have my 8 cue points, which to me is a brilliant little thing. And I always take it with me to gigs. I have a lot of hybrid setups as well, which I go to turn up to clubs, and they have, which is really nice. So I can just plug it in, have the Pioneers all connected through scratch mode, through on audio 10, for example, and then I can use this. So this is part 2 of 5, but there's going to be an extra one of all the questions that I've had from part 1 of the F1. Hope this has changed your life, clickbait, and I'll see you next time. Feel free to ask me any questions as you always do. Thank you very much. See you soon.